in terms of your research, how does it help the community? How does it help me knowing that 3 is different in different cultures? But 3.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways. We were mostly looking how stuff works in the brain, and because those very early steps where kids learn that 1 is 1, 2 is 2, 3 is 3, those have huge consequences for the rest of their lives.
Hello, Fabian, and welcome to Ph.D. Hard Talk. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. So thank you very much for wanting to participate today and basically go through your research. Could you please introduce your research to the wider audience out there?
Yeah, sure. I'm Fabian. I'm in the Netherlands right now, and my research was focused on the neural developmental processes that help us learn numbers. So in simple terms, to not be fancy, we use numbers like all of our lives, like you don't even realize it. But if you think about it, like the number 5 is like a squiggly line. You see it and you know it's 5, but it makes no sense. It's just a squiggly line. Like there's nothing 5 about a 5, but we still know that it means 5 things. And
yeah,
at some point,
got 5 on it, mate. See, 5 on it. That's 5. I know it's 5 because it's 5.
Exactly. At some point when we were really young, before we can even remember, it's around like when you're 2-3 years old. That's when you connect this concept of quantity, like how much something is, to this weird symbol that we all know. And my research was focused on how we make that connection, because you have to know, like kids can't count. Like if you don't know what numbers are, you can't count, you can't figure out how much something is, because you don't know the concept of symbols or quantities or anything. You have to learn that still. And the second part of my research also involved our hands, because what kids do, what we see kids do, even before they can count, if you ask them like, how old are you? They're like, I'm this many or this many or something. They can use their hands to talk about quantities, even if they don't really know the words. And part of my research also involved in seeing how the way we hold up our fingers to show it a number, for example, for me, this is 3, but for you, it might be this. I think I've seen some people do this. Like there's different ways of holding up your hand, but there's one way for everyone that's specific to their culture. That's the one they learned, and that's the one they will use without thinking. And that part of my research focused on how those hand symbols kind of help us also learn what quantities and what symbols are.
Okay, so in terms of your research, how does it help the community from a global perspective? Yeah. How does it help me knowing that 3 is different in different cultures? As you've gone through it there, I think I can't remember 3.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways.
There's a lot of ways.
Yeah. So my research was at very fundamental, so to say. Like we were mostly looking for how stuff works in the brain, and how we can like find some measures to determine, okay, this person or this child is actually using their concept of quantity to know what something is. So in that sense, it was very fundamental, and it lays the groundwork for future studies and also intervention methods, because those very early steps, those steps where kids learn that 1 is 1, 2 is 2, 3 is 3, those have huge consequences for the rest of their lives. If there is a delay in learning how to count, then that delay kind of builds upon it, and it snowballs. It's not super dramatic or anything that they have a terrible life or whatever, but we do see that it kind of puts a delay on their development, and they might not even start, like they might hate math at some point. And what we see is that this ability, not just how to count, but also the ability to do math, and that's the classical math that we do in school, like 2 + 2, but also like the day-to-day math where you have to budget your money, or you have to plan your day. You also use math for that, and quantities and numbers for that. And all that is affected by all the way in the beginning, where you actually make that connection between what a number is. So the better the basis for those abilities, the better a child can develop itself and reach their highest potential, so to speak.
Okay, so if, for example, I'm a youngster and I don't have that grounding in terms of counting, can I then learn when I'm older and get that foundation to be at the same level as other people who learnt it during that milestone? Or am I at a disadvantage at that point when I'm older? Or you haven't looked at that?
Well, in general, what we see with a lot of abilities that kids do, not just with math, but all the developmental milestone, is that the bigger the delay is, the harder it's going to be to learn. So if you're just delayed by 1 year, that's going to be less of a disadvantage than 5 years or 10 years. For example, language is a very good example of that. Kids learn languages like nothing. They just have to listen to it and they'll figure it out. But for adults, we need to have apps and classes and practice and all that kind of stuff. And then we still don't really know what we're talking about.
I understand. I've learnt a few that have gone way back there. I can't find them anymore. No, that's interesting. So in terms of your work then, is it for schools, policymakers, government? Whom are you presenting this to?
So my research specifically is probably more interesting for other scientists.
Oh, yeah.
Since what we found was more like, hey, if you use this measure, we can see you can use this. This is a tool you can use. We've also updated what we thought we knew about how kids learn numbers, and added more evidence to some new ideas about how that works. And of course, that can then eventually translate into like teachers or policymakers or even interventions. But primarily, it's mostly for other scientists to use and further their own research.
Okay, so from me, who's listening in and who's read through some of your work, I'm thinking this is more psychological. Did you have some psychological influence when thinking of what to look at? Or was it just purely just maths and then you were inspired?
Well, I think the influence was mostly, the developmental psychology part. Very broadly, it's about how kids learn and how memory and attention works. Those big topics in psychology and neuroscience.
Okay. Do you know anybody that's currently struggling? Is that what influenced you, or is it purely for you to get your PhD or to publish? What was the trigger? Not in a bad way.
It wasn't necessarily that I know someone who's struggling. It was just like I just really like the topic as well, and I'm also one of those weird people who likes to do math and statistics and data stuff. So the topic itself was really interesting, and I also have like I really enjoy developmental psychology and how kids learn and what their world looks like. So this seemed like a very good combination of all those things that I enjoyed.
Okay, excellent. So in terms of future then, what are you thinking? You've explained to me that this is purely for other scientists. Are you thinking to continue down this path, or are you looking at other avenues in terms of research?
So for me, I am moving on, I'm switching careers a little bit, going from after the PhD, now I'm working as a data scientist in industry rather than in academia, where I'm mostly doing marketing research and using everything I learned over there for a while.
Okay, so you've done a switch.
Yeah.
What made you switch from academia to industry? Help me understand that transition.
So I was like at the end of my PhD, and then you get to a point where you're like, okay, so what is my future going to look like? Because you finally get some time to think. And then if you stay on this track, so after the PhD, the way it's at least here, usually you do a postdoc or several postdocs, and hopefully you get some kind of contract to be like a university teacher. Yeah. So, and then it's going to end up with you, like the end goal would be then to become a professor. And from what I saw is that as a professor, you're mostly doing teaching and bureaucracy and being more of a manager and a supervisor to postdocs and PhDs that are doing the science. And I enjoyed doing the science and working with data and analyzing and figuring out how the world works. So that wasn't the best prospect for me. Nothing wrong with it. Like a lot of people are fine with that and they do a wonderful job, but it just wasn't for me. So I looked at something else. I looked at where my skills could take me outside of academia.
Okay, so when you started your PhD, did you get the guidance when reflecting back? Do you feel you got the guidance that helped you to make that decision, or was it mainly due to luck that you were able to come to that realization to say, do you know what, I want to step out of this instead of staying in academia?
It wasn't necessarily that there was specifically guidance where there's like seminars or presentations where they tell you, well, this is what we do in academia, this is what you can do in industry, make a decision or anything. I did get wonderful guidance, and I got a lot of opportunities to see how it works in both ways. I got to see how different professors do their job, and I got to see how postdocs work and how the teachers work and how pretty much everything works in university. And I got to see how things work in industry, and I talked to people there. So that's the advantage of having, I guess, a bit of a network and just the I don't want to say the balls. I want to say the the courage, just to have the courage to ask your network about like how do things work there, and to just be honest with everyone. I think that helped me the most. Okay. That I wasn't just being shown all the prestige of academia and how amazing it can be if everything goes right, because sometimes it doesn't go right. In a lot of cases, like not everyone becomes a professor that gets $1 million grants and gets to lead their own lab. Like there's going to be a lot of people who are just doing their job daily and maybe struggling here and there to get a grant and just trying to get their work out.
Yeah.
So just seeing it from all corners, that's what helped me most.
Okay. So in terms of advice then, let's say I'm a first year PhD student, what advice would you give me?
So I think the most important advice is to be open to leaving academia, because academia has this way of making it seem like that's where you belong and that's where you should be, and that's the only place where you can do science and mean something for the world, which isn't true. There is a lot of places outside of academia where you can do research, where you can do science, where you can make a difference. So my advice would definitely be to be open to seeing those perspectives and to let go of the prestige of academia, because it doesn't mean, like, if you leave academia, that doesn't mean you fail. It's perfectly fine to get your PhD, get your doctorate, get your degree, and then get out. It's fine.
Okay. So in terms of future, do you think you will come back and try and publish some papers, or do you feel like I'm done, I'm loving what I'm doing? What are your thoughts, or you haven't thought that far?
No, I might, like, I'm definitely still open to it. In the kind of work that I do, there's definitely still opportunities to write papers or to collaborate with people.
Yeah.
For example, I work at a company right now, but they also take interns, and I'm still coaching or mentoring students, just like I was when I was working at the university. So it's not that I'm completely out of it, and I still enjoy doing it. Like, I love working with the students and seeing all their perspectives and their new ideas and all the really smart stuff that they're doing. So I'm definitely still open to like publish a paper here and there. And I can tell you, it's also a big relief to know that I don't have to, that I can do it if I want to.
Yeah, it's a choice.
Yes, exactly. Like, my job doesn't depend on being productive with papers and publishing.
Okay, that's interesting. In terms of somebody who's out there, I'm sure there's someone who's still decided in terms of the next steps. So the way you've summed it up, that's brilliant. So in terms of your current situation, how did you find it when you started working the 9 to 5? I'm not saying you're working 9 to 5, but in that sense, when you started your contracted hours, let me rephrase it. When you started your contracted hours, how did you feel coming from academia and going into industry?
So the switch, well, it wasn't as big as you think it will be. Because during the PhD, I always tried to keep like a 9 to 5 schedule and like make sure that I stopped working at the end of the day so I have enough time to relax. Otherwise, I couldn't sleep right. But it was also during like pandemic times, so I was working from home for a whole year. So that was still, that kind of messes up your schedule. But the switch to industry, it's definitely different than in academia. You're in academia, at least here, like in my experience, they let you go and you can do whatever you want and figure it out, as long as at the end of as long as by the end of the meeting, the next meeting, you have your results to show, then nobody really cares how you do it, just that you do it.
Yeah.
Although, like, I've also seen like there's groups who have weekly meetings, and there's groups where they don't see their PI for like 6 months or something. So there's like a huge difference. But that's what it was for me. Like, I usually had meetings when I had something to show. And right now, in industry or in the company, it's way more structured. So we have a meeting on Monday to talk about what we're going to do for the rest of the week. Then there's another meeting on Wednesday to see how that's coming along. There's a lot stricter deadlines, but at the same time, there's also, quite a bit of respect for your time. So when we have on Monday, when we schedule our week, we're like, we have 40 hours for a week, and we're going to schedule these projects. We know how much hours approximately each project takes. So we're going to make sure that you don't go over 40 hours, because that's not good. And that's usually not something that happens in academia. It's just like, it has to get done. And if you work 80 hours per week, then so be it. Which, that's not so good.
Okay, so you've found a place where you are quite content and happy based on your summary. That's brilliant. So in terms of today, then, I'll ask you a question. It's just a random question. I'm sure you know the answer already. What made you come on Hard Talk, on PhD Hard Talk?
So, I mean, of course, because you asked me. But secondly,
don't throw me under the bus. I didn't ask you. I'm joking.
So I do like getting the story out, and I enjoy showing or talking about how my road has been, because it's not been like a typical academic road, I suppose. And also showing, like, I realized also that I got really lucky with every step along the way, and also getting the job that I have now. But also like that it's fine also to take that road. Like you don't have to do what you're told. You don't have to do what you're supposed to do. And you just do whatever you think you should do. And I think that's important to like show people that there's different ways of doing your PhD, and as long as you just get that degree at the end, then it's fine.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you another random question. So do you feel like you need the PhD to do the job that you're doing now?
So in terms of purely a degree, I don't need the PhD. Like most of the people at the company don't have a PhD. Most of my colleagues don't have a PhD. I do think that the job that I'm doing right now, like everything that I'm doing, I did learn a whole lot during my PhD on how to do that. Okay. So the experience of the PhD definitely helped me to do the job that I'm doing right now. And that's another thing people should also realize, like by the end of your PhD or doing your PhD, that you have a lot of skills that you don't realize that you have. There's a lot of stuff you need to do for a PhD that's not just science. Like you have to do project management. You have to also manage yourself, manage your time. You have analysis skills, you have reading skills, writing skills. There's so much stuff you can do that you don't even think about because you're in an environment where everyone is doing those things, so it doesn't seem special. But if you look at the broader world, it's pretty special what we're doing. And you're all just doing it because that's how you're supposed to do it.
Okay, powerful words. Special, yeah. I like that. I'll use that one myself. Thank you. I'm taking that one.
Yeah, definitely. What you're doing is very special.
Oh, thank you. But in terms of, just to close off and to thank you so much, do you have any wise words for anybody that's sitting there and thinking, right, I feel like I'm overqualified because I've got a PhD. I really want to go into industry, but I'm scared. What advice do you have?
I would just say, just try it. It can go both ways. Sometimes people think I'm overqualified to do something. Also, a lot of times people think that they're underqualified because they underestimate what they can do. So I would say, like, think about what skills you have. Just write them all down. It doesn't matter if you think, well, that's something everyone can do, because that's probably not true. And just try it. Maybe you get rejected. Maybe you don't even get an interview or you don't hear anything back. But then, like, you don't have anything to lose. You only have something to gain. So if you're thinking about going into industry, even if you're doubting, just give it a shot. Why not?
Okay. So essentially what you're saying is resilience is key here. You will get rejected. It's bound to happen, but you need to keep going.
I mean, it's also something that most PhDs already have experience with. If you try and publish anything, rejection is part of it. If you get through to reviews, then rejection is even worse. Like the whole reviewer comment thing, it's just terrible. You already know how to deal with rejection. You already know how to deal with feedback.
Yeah. Okay, so there's one more thing that you mentioned. Well, I touched on it and then you mentioned as well, which is being overqualified. How do you manage feeling like you're overqualified, and also when the external, in terms of your colleagues, think that you're overqualified? How do you manage that?
Well, it's also a bit of expectation management, perhaps. And maybe also a bit of ego, but if you're overqualified for something, that's if you still get the job, that's fine. Then you have some extra time for yourself because you get the job done sooner, and then you can improve things as well. Because it's at least in the job that I'm doing as well. I'm not saying I'm overqualified for the job at all, but say if I can do an analysis really quickly, then I have extra time to also improve it. And if you can improve something, at least in industry, if you come up with a new method or you come up with a better way of doing things, that's highly appreciated. You might even get paid for it. There's a lot of stuff that you can do. If you are truly overqualified for something, then you can make even more changes if you want.
Okay, you're throwing a lot of shade. You are throwing a lot of shade, honey. Right. We do get paid. It's a tough life to be a doctor. We do.
It is. It's like science. It's you get paid, but there's also a lot of passion involved. That's true.
Yes, but it's more passion, isn't it? More than money. The value is passion, the title, and being content. Again.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Although, you know, at the end of the day, you still have to pay rent and pay groceries, and they don't accept passion there. So.
But yeah, we've come to the end of our discussion. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and also your journey in terms of industry and academia. So we've made a few changes. It's now hashtag Project Dissemination to the world, just to get everybody's research out there and to, you know, educate the world in terms of what we do and the benefits behind it. So thank you again, Dr. Fabian van den Berg. And I know I said that wrong, but I've said it.
It's fine.
But thank you again for your time.
You're very welcome.
Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe, and share and share and share. We need more people to subscribe and turn on your notifications as well.